Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for sharing part of your weekend with us. On the show tonight, new analysis on the Chicago Police Department's use of force. Activists weigh in on the data and its impact on Black Chicagoans. A push for reparations in Chicago at a standstill. We dig into the holdup and what's next. And women in trades. A mom and daughter share their passion for building in tonight's The Last Word.
The arts and dance is life affirmative.
And after 2 years, dancers with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater pick up where they left off at the Auditorium Theater. First off tonight, Chicago police were more likely to stop and use force against Black Chicagoans, according to a new report from the Office of the Inspector General. The oversight agency reviewed the department's stops and use of force incidents between 2017 and 2020. It found Black people were overwhelmingly disproportionately stopped by CPD regardless of the demographic composition and crime level in the area. Black people were disproportionately subjected to force, and CPD was more likely to use higher level force options against Black people than against non-Black people. So joining us now are Anthony Driver, a member of the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression's Political Committee, and Xavier Ramey, CEO of Justice Informed. Thanks to you both for joining us again. So let's get into the data a little bit more with some specifics. Here are a few examples. When a police stop led to the use of force, more than 83% of those incidents involved a Black person. In the Near North Police District, where Blacks make up nearly 8% of residents, they made up more than 73% of police stops. But also in Auburn Gresham, where Blacks are the majority. At 96%, they made up 97% of police stops. Now, the IG report, that office says that this report does not conclude that police officers made these stops or used force because of racial or ethnic bias. But Anthony Driver, let's come to you first, please. What is your reaction to this report? What do these numbers say to you?
Yeah, these numbers for me say what I've already known. I grew up on the South Side. I'm still a South Side resident, and I've been a member of this community all my life. And these numbers justify what I've been saying for all of my life, is that there's a disproportionate amount of Black people who are stopped, who are harassed, who many times face disproportionate outcomes in this city. So it's great that the general public is getting a view of this. But as a Black man who grew up on the South Side of Chicago, these are numbers that I've known for quite a while now.
Xavier Ramey, same question to you. What role does race play here? Is this report actually evidence of bias, despite the IG office's statement that there is no evidence necessarily that bias was used? Xavier, I think, yep, there you are.
Sorry about that. I don't think that the purpose of one of these reports is to draw a causal link. I think that it's to show evidence of the pattern and practice in an empirical lens. And I think that that is exactly what it has done. The pattern and practice that Anthony brought up earlier, and the one that I've also lived through as a citizen of Chicago for the last my entire life, is proof positive that the findings in the report are and should not be news to anyone. But secondly, as it pertains to racial disparities in policing, it is something that we need to take more seriously. And we should also look through the lens of the various statutes, such as the consent decree, such as the oversight board that we have here in Chicago, as well as many of the findings from other reports on the Chicago police as it relates to racial disparities in stops and use of force in terms of incarceration, in terms of arrest, et cetera. This is more fuel to the fire that says we need reform now.
So in this analysis, CPD did send a statement to the Inspector General's office pointing to progress that it has made since the time frame of this analysis, because it was 2017 to 2020 that the data was used for this report. Superintendent David Brown reiterated that point at a news conference this past week around public safety. Here's what he had to say.
What it did outline that's important, I think, is, number one, we're on the right track as it relates to what the progress we've made in the consent decree since February of 2020. We've made significant progress by way of policy improvements. Training at that point in February 2020 was zero for officers. Mandatory training since then, every officer is required to complete 40 hours of training annually. In addition, at that point during this analysis, 17 to 2020, we had not come into compliance as it relates to our use of force policies. Today, we are in compliance with the consent decree as it relates to our use of force policies.
And of course, to be clear, the consent decree is a federal court order requiring the Chicago Police Department to reform training policies and practices in a number of areas, including use of force. Xavier, come back to you, though. Does Superintendent Brown have a point? Do you believe that there have been significant changes within the CPD since the consent decree took effect in 2019 and since the completion of the OIG's report in 2020? A lot can happen since then. A lot has happened since then.
The question directly is, do I believe that there have been changes? I do. Do I believe that those changes are insufficient? Absolutely. Part of what Superintendent Brown just noted was that in 2020, there was zero training. That is, those were his words. There was zero training for Chicago Police Department officers, and now there's 40 hours of training. We have been talking about this problem for centuries. We've been talking specifically in terms of my life for decades. Throughout the history of the Chicago Police, we have always heard from superintendents that we are doing more, we're doing better, things are getting better, we're increasing reforms. We heard that under as far back as Jody Weiss. We've heard that from superintendents for years and years and years, and still we stand here and we say, reform is not wholly what we're going after. What we're talking about is a revolutionary change in the way we look at the administration of public safety. We're not talking about changing just policies, though policies are important things to change. What we're talking about is changing the strategy for public safety. The policies are simply reforms. Strategy change is truly revolutionary, and that means that we move away from policing as a primary source of public safety. It means that we invest more deeply into community solutions for public safety rather than the securitization of certain people and the deputization of people using guns and batons, et cetera, to administer an environment that hopefully keeps people safe, which we can see year after year and study after study when it comes to Black Chicagoans and brown Chicagoans, that not only is that disparately untrue, but that is increasingly something that is a pain point in creating trust in the city itself between those communities and the city leadership.
Anthony Driver, how about you? How do you think Chicago is doing with regards to reforming police and to public safety?
Yeah, so for me, what I'm looking for is accountability. I would like to see the Chicago Police Department be held to the same standard, if not a higher standard, than ordinary citizens. So what this OIG report did was allow us to put this into numbers, was to allow us to see data points. What Superintendent Brown did was respond with essentially a press release statement. I would like for him to hold himself to a higher standard as well as release the updated numbers. If he says that there's been progress, I would absolutely love for him to show us that progress through the data and show that since February 2020, when there was 70% of consent decree deadlines missed by the Chicago Police Department, I would like to see that updated data for the year 2021 and 2022. I'd also like to say that if that's true, that would be great. There's a lot more to do, but there's no other profession in the United States where you can miss a deadline 70% of the time and still keep your job.
That's right.
And so, Anthony, the creation of a civilian-led police oversight board, we know that is in the works. The Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, of course, this group is intended to give some civilians some oversight over policing and particularly police misconduct. Anthony, do you think this will lead to the change you'd like to see?
I think it's a step in the right direction. In the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois specifically, we've asked always for community control of the police. This oversight board is not community control of the police, but it is a step in the right direction. We're looking to have a directly elected board that is elected by citizens of Chicago who will oversee this, similar to how the school board is. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. This gives residents a voice. Most importantly, it decentralizes power. We have gotten used in Chicago to a strong man or a strong woman being the mayor of the city of Chicago, who is all powerful. That is not the way a democracy is supposed to function. We would like to put power back in the hands of the people. And I think this ordinance is a great step in the right direction. And I look forward to this board getting up and running.
Okay, a lot of work lies ahead for that board, I'm sure. We look forward to having you both back to talk about it as it progresses. That's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Xavier Ramey and Anthony Driver for joining us.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can find a link to the full Watchdog report on the CPD's use of force on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. Confirmation hearings for the appointment of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court are set to begin March 21st. Illinois U.S. Senator Dick Durbin will lead the effort as he is the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It oversees the nomination process.
I'm looking forward to this. It's an awesome responsibility and possibly the greatest responsibility of the Senate Judiciary Committee to advise and consent to a president's nominee for a lifetime appointment to the highest court on the land. I want this to be fair, timely, and professional.
Jackson spent the week meeting with top senators, including Senator Durbin. Durbin says he's hoping for a bipartisan confirmation vote. Even though Democrats don't need Republican support to confirm Jackson, they can do so with their 50 votes and Vice President Kamala Harris breaking a tie. Durbin says, though, he knows of at least one Republican planning to vote in favor of Jackson, and he's reaching out to others. If confirmed, Jackson would be the first black woman to serve on the nation's highest court. The confirmation hearings are expected to last 4 days. Up next, a look at the status of reparations in Chicago. Stay with us. It's been nearly 2 years since Chicago officials set a plan in motion to study whether and how the city should pay reparations to the descendants of enslaved African Americans. A subcommittee was created in June 2020, but since then, little has happened. WTTW News reporter Heather Sharon dug into this, and she joins us now with more on why. Heather, why hasn't this effort to make reparations taken off?
Well, the subcommittee that you mentioned met only once nearly a year ago, and the chairman of that subcommittee, Alderman Stephanie Coleman, says she's been unable to get a second meeting scheduled, in part because the push does not enjoy the full-throated support of Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who blocked alderpeople from creating a full commission to study the issue of reparations and forced them instead to settle for this subcommittee that never really got off the ground and now has completely stalled.
So we spoke with 6th Ward Alderman Roderick Sawyer, who was instrumental in creating this subcommittee. Here's what he's had to say about this delay.
The issue as it relates to the city is that there seems not to be a real interest in what we commonly refer to as reparations. There's interest in the things like the guaranteed income pilot and others, but about true reparations, we're coming to a bit of a head. I'm satisfied with the group that brought me in. The Conrad Rural Reparations Committee has been formed as a not-for-profit, and we're still fighting. And I want to thank my chairman of my subcommittee, Stephanie Coleman, who's been working extremely hard trying to get meetings scheduled. But to be honest with you, we come up with roadblocks every step of the way. We may have to take our meetings on the road and do them out into public spaces for the public to see.
No, Heather Sawyer there saying that he feels the administration isn't making reparations a priority. What does Mayor Lightfoot's office have to say?
Well, when I asked them why this push had been stalled for so long, the mayor very specifically did not back studying reparations. Instead, she said that she has consistently supported what she called a, quote, reparative agenda, end quote. And she says that that agenda is the best way to improve the lives of Black and Latino Chicagoans. However, that is a separate issue than whether the city owes a debt to the descendants of enslaved African Americans. And if you saw our firsthand documentary on segregation, you know that the legal apparatus that has reduced investment on the South and the West Side was firmly entrenched in Chicago by the government. That's what Alderman Sawyer and Alderman Coleman want the city to address, and that the city so far hasn't.
Right, and that's something that, of course, Heather, you've done quite a bit of reporting on, and a great story that people can find on our website. Sawyer also told us that he believes the Lightfoot administration is more focused on equitable treatment with programs like guaranteed income and affordable housing investments, but he says that that is different from reparations. Here he is again.
It's not intended for the descendants of enslaved Africans. I'm not saying anything that's horribly wrong with the pilot program. I'm sure it could benefit some people, and it may inadvertently benefit some descendants of enslaved Africans. But we want to be intentional about what we do. What we're trying to do is focus on the ills that we have been facing all these years and the repair for the descendants of enslaved Africans.
And of course, you know, speaking of the city's guaranteed basic income pilot program, you and I, we covered it on the show here a couple of weeks ago, and you've covered it as well, Heather. Where does that initiative stand? There have been some developments.
Right. The city will start accepting applications from Chicagoans who want to be a part of that program in April. And they will have to meet a certain set of criteria, including a maximum income level and whether they suffered economic harm because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Those applications are expected to launch in April, and the city only has $31.5 million to spend on this program, and that will help about 5,000 families, but they expect the demand to be much greater. So families will be selected through a lottery to participate in it. Also, this week, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwill announced that the county will run a similar test program with $41.5 million in the county, making the county program the biggest test of a guaranteed basic income in the United States to date.
That's right. All right. So something to keep an eye on going forward. Obviously, Heather Cherone, thanks as always for joining us.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Heather's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news. Up next, a popular dance company back on tour after a 2-year hiatus. It was at the city's Auditorium Theater where dancers with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater would unknowingly perform for the last time before a nearly 2-year hiatus. Fast forward to today, and they're back on their first national tour. Arts correspondent Angel Edo gives us a taste of how they're celebrating their return to the stage.
Dancers with the Alvin Ailey American Theater say they're excited to be back on stage.
Now this reemergence, we come back even more resilient and defiant and more mission-driven, right? To be able to do what Alvin Ailey said he was trying to do in the first place. He said, what I'm trying to do is hold a mirror of society so that people could see how beautiful they are.
The tour commemorates the 10-year anniversary of artistic director Robert Battle, featuring nearly every work he's choreographed since joining the company.
I have a solo to the music of Nina Simone, a dance love story to the music of Stevie Wonder, and a work called Ella to the music of Ella Fitzgerald, and then one with the singing of Leontyne Price. And so it's really varied and shows, you know, the varied nature of the company.
Chicago native and company dancer Solomon Dumas agrees. He says Battle's work is reflective of Ailey's goal to create a company that celebrates the full African diaspora. Dumas says he's excited to share those stories on stage again.
His work speaks to the diversity in Black voices. And so I think that's what's important, that's what sets us apart, and that's what propels us forward, and that's what maintains the company and keeps the company moving in these hard times. The joy comes in the work. Being back on stage is something that I can't even explain, can't even articulate it.
From classical modern to contemporary to African to hip-hop and even jazz. Battle says he hopes the audience will feel the, quote, full gamut of the company's range.
You feel when you leave the company that you've had an experience of all the senses, not just visually, but the music, the drama, the history, the culture, what we've been through, the shoulders on which we stand in order to get on the stage and tell our stories. So it's mission driven.
That mission is reflected in many hours of rehearsal with very little downtime. But Dumas says he'd take that over virtual rehearsals any day.
The beauty of being a performing artist, performing Mr. Ailey's work, and being able to be a part of that connection of giving back, bringing dance back to the people is something that it's so difficult to articulate, but it is the therapy that I didn't know I had.
Whether it be newer works choreographed by Battle or Alvin Ailey originals, the group is confident their return to the stage will be well received.
Dance comes from the people and should always be delivered back to the people. I think that's why people relate to this company so much over 60 years later.
For Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Angel Ito.
And you can see the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater at the Auditorium Theater through Sunday. If you're interested in learning more about Alvin Ailey himself, be sure to check out the new PBS American Masters documentary called Ailey that debuted in January. You can head to our website for more information. The trades industry is dominated by men. Women make up less than 3% of the workforce in Illinois, according to Chicago Women in Trades. That's a nonprofit that helps women enter the field. It offers free training programs and access to employment opportunities across the city. This mom and daughter pair give us the last word tonight on why they chose this career path.
Hi, I'm Renee Wilson-Hill, and I am a winder.
My name is Zara Hill, and I'm a local 130 plumber. I'm a tradeswoman because I can afford to take care of my family. It's a career, something that you can take with you for life.
Women, we can go into the trades, but then we also are still women. One day we're going to become mothers. One day we're going to become married. And so we have to incorporate that in our life.
A lot of children, all they know is, well, once you graduate high school, you got to go to college or you got to play some type of sport. That's the only way you're going to make it in this world. The trades is an option, and the only way I knew it was an option because I saw my mother go through it. Women in work boots was not a second guess. It was like, oh, okay, this is normal, until I saw everybody else parents like, oh, your mom wears a skirt to work? Mine's wear coveralls. Like, your mom wear high heels, mine's wear work boots. Okay.
When I first entered, it was a lot of sexism, but as time goes on with the younger generation of men that's coming up, they're more acceptable to women working in the trades. They don't care.
I know that it was a lot of sisters that took the grunt of the work to make it so that my work experience isn't as brutal as they had to take it. I'm standing on some tall shoulders. As a child, my mother, we rehabbed a few buildings. And so if you were old enough to follow directions, you were working. She set the bar high. She had high expectations of us, and we had to meet the bar. She wanted me to go to college. And I went to college, and I wasn't very successful in college. And then one day, and I'll tell this story to anybody, one day we were cleaning out the basement, and I came across some of her old welding gear from Chicago Women in Trade. And I was like, why don't I go to Chicago Women in Trade? She was like, I don't know. Let me call Jane. And the rest was history. I'm grateful that she geared us, or me, towards working with my hands, because it's allowed me to take care of my family.
A job is something that anybody can do. A trade is your lifetime career that you build and work on.
A lot of people look at the building trades as a paycheck. And most of the times when you look at it as a paycheck, you're not very successful because you're not happy in what you're doing. I legitimately love what I do. The pay is a bonus. I love the fact that it's the only utility you can't live without. You can't live without clean drinking water. You can't live without knowing how to dispose of waste properly. Plumbers protect the health of the nation. It's a sense of pride knowing that, because we're the only licensed trade, you have to have a plumbing license in order to do plumbing, every single individual. And it gives you a sense of pride knowing that there are not many people like me. especially not female, and been Black female.
Zara Hill says she eventually wants to start a school for young children so that they can learn about the trades industry at a young age. And tune into Chicago Tonight Latino Voices, where we'll introduce you to another woman in the trade industry, iron worker Jennifer Ortiz. And that's our show for this weekend. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News, including details into efforts to preserve the Bell Bowl Prairie. And if you're watching us on Saturday night, know that you can also catch Black Voices and Latino Voices on Sundays beginning at 10 p.m. And join me and Paris Schutz next week at 7 on Chicago Tonight. We leave you tonight with a look at rehearsal from the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater's upcoming production. Again, they're performing at the Auditorium Theater through the weekend. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for sharing part of your weekend with us. Stay healthy and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that's proud to serve its community through pro bono legal services.